Hey everybody, welcome to a Chainlink live episode. I've got Kevin Rose here from BitDAO. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing okay. A little tired. My kids kept me up all night, but not too tired to not talk about BitDAO. So
Awesome. I've got a fish back here that's been keeping me up. This little guy's grumpy, so he hasn't been fed. So I understand the pain.
ah,
I've got some regrets of my own.
yeah,
It's
okay. I was gonna say those two things are exactly the same.
yeah. It's good to have you here, man, and it's good to have the community here as well. Hey, everybody, my name's Andy from Chainlink Labs. We're going to talk about BitDAO. They recently announced a new Chainlink price feed for the price oracles for the BIT token, and so we're going to talk about that, talk about how it came about, because it's kind of a cool story, origin story, about how this came on, and I'm going to learn about BitDAO because I don't know too much about it. I know you guys implemented this price feed and you're a community and a DAO, but I don't know exactly what for. So I'm really excited to learn more about this. We got Serkan in the chat. How you doing, man? I've seen you here before. If you have questions in the chat, feel free. Yeah, I see. He's happy. Feel free to drop them in there. We'll get to the ones that we can today and kind of go through and talk. All right, we already have a bunch of people here. So let's go ahead and get started. Kevin, let me just play my little intro here so we can get excited. It's Chainlink Live.
Yeah.
All right, Chainlink Live. We are with BitDAO. Kevin, tell us what is it about? Like, jump right in. What is BitDAO? What's sort of the high level, and what's the unique value that you guys bring to the ecosystem?
Yeah, BitDAO is I think it's the industry's like best kept secret right now, and so we're all looking to change that. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Rose. I'm head of marketing communications for Windranger Labs, and we're a private contributor to the BitDAO ecosystem. So right now, the easiest thing to start off with is that BitDAO is the largest token governed treasury on Earth. Um, it is billions in assets, and it's one of the most diversified treasuries as well. And really, what makes it special is that it has this extremely broad broad mandate to drive forward Web3's treasury in general. We believe in the BitDAO community that DAOs can do more across different industries like art, entertainment, finance, technology, gaming, media, you name it. And what BitDAO is doing in terms of size and scope and impact is really not being replicated anywhere else. It is taking large-scale capital allocations and building net new organizations across these industries that are modeled like Web3 organizations. So recently it's done almost $650 million in allocations over the last 100 days or so across gaming, layer 2 scaling, and education. And it doesn't seem like we'll be slowing down anytime soon. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
So I've heard of investment DAOs, which kind of operate like a VC, but it's like a community-sourced LPs essentially. And then there's some sort of like incubator models that kind of have, internally they build their own spin-offs, and some organizations accidentally do that. That's what Synthetics did with Tailies and these other protocols. Quenta is, oh, we'll fund this, and then it's its own thing, but they're related. Is BitDAO somewhere in between those? Like, are you guys building your own stuff? Or are you building on behalf of protocols? Or when do you get in on the rounds? Like, what's the sort of story there?
Yeah, we struggle with this a lot because it's so unique in the way that it's operating. It doesn't seem to fit into any one category. So we're trying to figure out maybe if there's a new category like Builder DAO that we need to do. But on paper, it looks like an investment DAO. It's taking capital, allocating it to a new organization in exchange for some terms of economic alignment. But it's really like what it's allocating it to that's really unique. It's building out these organizations that we hope are going to serve as foundational pillars of the Web3 transformation that some of these industries undergo. So, for example, Game 7 is this new organization that in total is going to receive 500 million over 5 years, 400 of that coming from BitDAO. And what we think Game 7 can become is just the most trusted voice in accelerating the adoption of blockchain in gaming, helping build out those public goods, those standards, that open source software framework that will help game developers go from building blockchain games to games that use blockchain, making sure that we're building awesome games that bring in this new dynamic of player ownership of the items and achievements and in-game currencies that they earn. So I would say that it's this idea of a builder DAO. There are investments, but then we take it one step further. And this is actually where Windranger comes in particular, as well as other organizations in the ecosystem. It's not just an investment of capital, it's an investment of community. So BitDAO is growing, launching a new ambassador program. The community is growing every day. And there's large labs, private R&D labs, product labs that are coming online to basically receive the challenge that these large allocations with BitDAO drop down into industries. So with Game 7, working with them to bootstrap that organization, you're not just going back to what I said, you're not just receiving an investment of capital, but it's an investment of the surrounding community to envelop the mission and to ensure it's successful as well.
Awesome. We've got a few new joiners, so I want to just hit the intro again. Hey, everybody, I'm Andy from Chainlink Labs, talking to Kevin Rose from Windranger Labs, but Windranger is key, one of the many organizations, it sounds like, that's building out BitDAO protocol and BitDAO as an organization. A builder DAO, I like this term a lot. I've heard of investment firms, traditional VC investment firms, who once they kind of get into Web3, they realize like we need to hire developers and we need to support projects. We need to build our own. Like it's just there is this mesh that's going between these things, and it sounds a lot like BitDAO is kind of just coming from a native approach there in general. One question go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
One question I have is where is BitDAO? Is it an Ethereum-based thing? Is it multi-chain? Like, do your LPs or community members, do they come from all over the place? We've got a question about Elrond in the chat for your treasury. Like, who is BitDAO and where do y'all come from?
One of the things I like to say is that one of the things that makes BitDAO special is that it doesn't specialize. It's very chain and project agnostic. When we call it a builder DAO, I mean that literally. It goes where the builders are. I've been involved in blockchain since the end of 2016. I've been involved in launching layer ones in a decentralized way. I've been involved in working in DAOs full time. I've gone corporate, and then that was terrible, so came back to work DAOs full time again. BitDAO is everywhere, and it wants to go where those builders are, regardless of the layer one. If the technology is strong, if there are smart people and that need to bootstrap communities, that need capital to make their ideas to come to life, that's where BitDAO is going. So the community is all over the world. Right now, the treasury is on ETH, and to move it across chains, I think is probably an inevitability. But it's ultimately that's up to the community, and I wouldn't say that it's a priority right now, in so much as the priority is to continue to build as fast as possible. So it's likely that projects may be building on other chains before the treasury actually sits there.
That tracks. It feels like a land grab moment to many places. I talk to a lot of projects and VCs who like, let's get started, let's get going, let's make sure that we're building actively so that we can guide the industry in a way that's productive right now at this moment. And I feel that very much as well myself. Do you guys get a sense of that? Is there an internal one of BitDAO? Is there a community sense? Does it happen on Discord? Like, where does the actual work of the BitDAO happen?
Well, you're gonna have to be more specific when you say, is there an internal?
Internal, I'm sorry.
Well, I like eternal. We can say that was eternal. But internal, no. I mean, there is no core team in the sense that there is like a foundation for a layer one. It is the way DAOs operate, in that you enter the space and you prove the merit of your ideas and you ship. What can you build? What can you propose? Anybody can make a proposal to BitDAO so long as they meet the threshold of tokens. Lots of times large DAOs will have some minimum proposal threshold to reduce spam and things like that. But to actually have a proposal approved, it takes 100 million bit to vote yes, which is no trivial sum. But still, we have proposals coming from multiple places, and really it's the sky's the limit there. But there's no core team. It is growing organically.
Cool. Mark E in the chat has a question that relates to this. And so I wanted to bring it up as a kind of a case study. Mark says, hey guys, looking to build a commodity trading platform, and it feels like BitDAO has the foresight and architecture to support this. Is Mark right? And what are some obvious next step for us? I've got my hypothesis based on our conversation, but I'll leave that up there. Why don't you go ahead, Kevin, and kind of let Mark know what's the process?
Sure. So here's the process: is getting involved in the Telegram and the Discord, getting involved with the ambassadors who are helping drive the community forward, writing out a proposal that goes over, who you are, why you're able to get this done, what your strategy is, what the projected costs are, what the terms of the economic alignment between what you're doing in BitDAO would be, to make that proposal on the discourse. Which I can share all the links so that they can go on this video afterwards. And then that's like a soft proposal phase, like seeking feedback from the largest token holders or any token holder. They'll look at that space for new proposals. And then after receiving feedback, refining it and then putting it up for snapshot. So if you don't have tokens yourself to be able to propose it, to be above that 200,000 bit limit to make a proposal, there's actually a section in the discourse where you can go and seek out those people who are open to delegating to you to be able to do that. So pitching to those token holders that they can essentially sponsor your proposal to the DAO. There really is no limit. DeFi is a particular area of interest here. It's not slowing down. I think that there was DeFi summer, but there is this resurgence happening of this like 2.0 movement that's going beyond the biggest movers like MakerDAO, et cetera. They've gotten so large to the point where they may have regulation targets on their back. And so what they're able to do in terms of innovation and flexibility is a little different than what new groups are able to do, especially with the benefit of experience and hindsight to see what has come before it, what you're able to build on, build those Legos. So yeah, absolutely. We would want to see proposals like this. When I say we, I mean, I don't represent everybody, but it's like the entire community member body. But yeah, absolutely. That would be the process to go about it.
Are there a lot of new proposals? Like, is it a very active space? Like, you guys are constantly evaluating? Are you really looking for more, or is it like a slow drip sort of thing? You kind of refine and get these cool ones in general, or what would you like it to be? It might be, what are the goals for that?
That's a great question. So BitDAO the genesis of BitDAO wasn't until the middle of last year. And so in less than 1 year, it's become the largest token governed DAO, which is no small feat, but it's still a formative stage. And so I would say that the general sentiment of token holders is that while the attitude is move fast, break things, ship, right? Like we are competing in a space that is blindingly quick. These proposals are very large in scale. And this is, I think, a differentiating factor of BitDAO than with other large billion-dollar DAOs. If you look at them, the last few have been like 30 million, 200 million, 400 million. When you get to this level of complexity, when this level of capital, the complexity of the receiving organization can't be, one or two people. I think BitDAO is looking to make huge impacts. So it's very large scale, the proposals that like the community has appetite for right now. I think in the future, as it scales, there will be more flexible ways for smaller proposals to go through more easily. But as of right now, it is like game 7, for example, I have the privilege to help, work on that project. It's no small feat to build a $400 million organization. You're essentially, especially if you're incorporating DAO aspects to it. So I would say that
That's a
it's
huge race, right?
so
That's way bigger than a series A, even now when some of those valuations are pretty high. And so that's just like a different scale of capital. And so what I'm hearing from you is like that's not everything, but right now those have kind of been what's popular. Maybe there's room for some smaller ones as like things get rolling and people want to participate and learn about BitDAO
well, they
in general.
happen over years. They happen
Mm,
over years. So it's
yeah.
not like there is a push of $400 million worth of capital, and it's like, okay, good, have fun. It's over the course of 4 or 5 years. Each year they're coming back and saying, here's what we're able to accomplish with the first tranche. Can we have the second? Here are the results. Here's what we were able to do. So I would say that if you have a long-term vision, if you have a grand vision, BitDAO wants to hear about it. Even if you don't, I think that there of course are ways to put out smaller allocations, and there's no reason not to try. If you're trying to build something that is innovative, and you're a builder, BitDAO is the place for you.
Steven's got an awesome question. Notice I haven't gotten to any of my questions because we just jumped into an awesome conversation. BitDAO is fascinating. Steven asks, outside of DeFi, collectibles, gaming, what are industries where BitDAO sees value? What can devs work on? And maybe a better question is, what are some of the popular conversations and topics in the community that you've noticed? Or is there anybody who's, or groups of people who are just like, we need weather, we need insurance, we need, or whatever it is. What are some of those popular areas?
Well, first, if you wouldn't mind leaving the question up
Oh
itself.
yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
First, I can't answer really on behalf of BitDAO. I just want to stress that these are all my opinions. I'm a member of Windranger Labs, and we're a group of bit holders, and we want to see BitDAO succeed. But BitDAO is a global community, so where BitDAO sees real value is pretty difficult to describe, except by looking at proposals that have been passed. Personally, I think gaming is a sector that will be totally and completely transformed by blockchain technology. I think there is also a lot to be said about art and NFTs. That's kind of playing out now. I think that a lot of what's happening is very hype. It's very exciting. It's necessary, to generate these headlines of a CryptoPunk going for 23 million. It doesn't matter what one thinks about that. It is helpful to break through to the mainstream to get people to ask the question, what is a DAO? What is an NFT? What's going on here? Why is this? But I think what's important is that we need to be, as an industry, as a community, as a DAO, it doesn't matter who you are. We need to be providing the underpinnings of why that's happening to welcome new people into the space so that they understand the fundamental value of these asset formats. Non-fungible tokens as a form of ownership to reduce transaction costs, to increase sovereignty over that ownership, and to basically reduce reliance on the state and the judicial systems to decide who owns what, instead use blockchains. I mean, those are transformative ideas. And so I think we just need to remember those basics as we welcome new people in. But personally, I think gaming is absolutely ripe for disruption. And so that's why it's awesome that BitDAO is pushing Game 7 forward, and that organization is ramping up.
I agree. Not just with gaming, but media in general has a history of disruption, and it tends to thrive in disruption and ebbs and flows. I'm
Media
reminded
is
of
another one.
Yeah, Rack music NFTs and Rack's tweet thread last week about, well, NFTs, it's not necessarily that it'll disrupt all of IP, but it allows a new kind of patronage model. So it's a total like reorient your thinking. Here's what this enables. It's a different model altogether that still enables this thing. Tons of opportunity. Really great question, Stephen.
If I can add one thing
please.
on media. So I think we have 100 years of history of huge IP being developed by one person or a small group of people, like Elder Scrolls is actually a game, but I meant to say Lord of the Rings. But Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, these are huge IP, and they become so big that they eventually involve a huge community. And the process by which they generate canon or lore that is core to the IP is convoluted and difficult to get at. I think that one way DAOs can be very interesting in the next few years is what will be the next Star Wars? What will be this next massive generational IP, but that's built in a way through consensus, using a blockchain to decide where the story goes, what is canon, how it's built, the lore and rules of this universe. I think that would be so much fun. I'm
We
like a
need to
nerd
get
at
some
heart.
beers and get together and nerd out about this,
Yeah.
because I'm on your level, man. I used to. There's a really interesting example from Disney. For a lot of years, they didn't make any Mickey Mouse cartoons or put Mickey in movies because the backlash from fans was so intense. Because something about Mickey would be the way somebody didn't expect. And the fans had this ownership. The supporters of Disney had this ownership without having any ownership, any actual financial stake. But they had this emotional ownership, and so Disney for a long time had to fight against this really core fan base. It's only been really recently on Disney Plus, I think, where they've kind of had new life and new versions of Mickey that are different. So really interesting to kind of see that change in media in general as like fans and brands negotiate what's okay to talk about and do
The
that. And we're
appetite is
seeing
already
that
there. The appetite is already there for people. It's just that we lacked the tools 50 years ago to be able to coordinate globally and make those decisions. So I think that will be a really fun area to watch. I think this isn't BitDAO related, but what's happening with the loot verses is pretty cool. If you're aware of like loot NFTs and like there's this group that is generating like Divine DAO and like the story around loot. I think that's so cool. I can't wait to see that unfold.
Yeah, same. I'll be in the thick of it. We're having you on because recently BitDAO launched a new Chainlink price feed. And so we want to talk a little bit about this price feed as well. So it's the BIT price feed that now you can access from data.chain.link. Let me make sure that's right. But to get decentralized price data, one of the interesting stories, like, a lot of times there's some kind of core team or organization that's really pushing a price feed to make sure that there's a decentralized feed for their users. In this case, it's a little different. It comes from the community because everything from BitDAO comes from the community. So talk a little bit like, what does this price feed enable? Why a decentralized price feed and why now?
Sure. Everything does come from the community of BitDAO. And so Windranger, we're developing out disciplines of engineering, operations, marketing, and design. And we target needs and we fill them. We see something needs to be done, we get it done. And this is one of those things. It's absolutely necessary that there are decentralized price feeds built in that existing DeFi infrastructure can build off of. I don't think there's anything that I can say that would make that story new. It's so fundamental to the space. So we saw that need and we worked with you guys to get it done. So that's like the cool thing is because Windranger is comprised of Bit token holders. We are aligned with the success of the DAO. And so when we see something like, oh, we need a Chainlink price feed, it's a no-brainer for us to go out and do it. And because we are well organized and resourced, we don't need to go and seek a BitDAO proposal. For that in particular, we could just get it done, and the value isn't even debatable.
Awesome. Thank you very much. For those of you who are not familiar, Chainlink price feeds, that's kind of what Chainlink is the most well known for. They're decentralized price feeds. So there's like multiple node operators that go and source price data from dozens of aggregators that are out on the market, either exchanges or other aggregators. And then those node operators aggregate that data so you get one price, and outliers get thrown out. You have a lot of reliability and sort of back-end reliability built in there. So awesome to see that with Bit coming out now. That's the BIT price feed. If you guys want to go look it up, again, it is data.chain.link. And you can see that. And I think it's on Ethereum right now, but maybe other chains in the future as well. Are you guys looking at greater DeFi adoption for Bit itself? Or is this like, for now, just like you got to have this as a Web3 standard to be a part of the economy more broadly?
We really look at BitDAO as the coordination layer of the future. It's a lofty statement, and I mean that because there just isn't any other advocate of Web3 that is this kind of DAO engine. That's what BitDAO is doing. It's creating these autonomous entities from these allocations that then go off and are flexible enough to create their own value, their own products, their own services within these industries, but they remain connected to BitDAO, and BitDAO remains connected to them, through the Bit token, through the community. So I think, sorry, tell me your question again.
Well, I was just wondering, like, is it a DeFi play to have this and go, or is it just like you got to have fundamental infrastructure to work in Web3? And that's what it sounds like. It sounds like the latter is, as you guys build out DAOs and build out a process to build more DAOs and this sort of community governance, is you've got to have clear on-chain data. So that's
part of the onboarding process for any DAO is people being able to acquire the token to participate in the governance process. And so to be able to do that, it needs to be widely available. It needs to be liquid, and having a decentralized price feed is a foundational part of that. So making sure that you tick those boxes, that people are able to essentially join the DAO is necessary. And so that's why it's important for us to get it done.
I really like this idea of DAOs building DAOs. Do you guys, is it a focus to make sure that the funding from BitDAO goes to generate more community organizations, or is there like a range that BitDAO tends to support, or is there no clear guidelines on that?
DAOs are a spectrum. I think that's like NFTs are a spectrum. All this is a spectrum. These are general formats. And so like for DAOs, I look at it like an LLC in the United States, and which didn't exist till like the 1970s, by the way. This wasn't always around, but now we just assume that's around. So I look at a DAO as a spectrum of organizational structure. So you can go totally decentralized, like BitDAO is, with token holders all over the world, or you can have smaller delegated committees. You can do all sorts of things. So there is no hard and fast rule on how BitDAO organizations must be structured, because that's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. The organization should be structured in such a way that lends itself to achieving its goal, to making impact in the industry that it's in. So those types of things, I think they get to unfold organically as the organization ramps up operations. So in the proposals, which you can all check out on BitDAO Snapshot or in the discourse, the discussions that have been around them, they outline generally the direction, and I think that no good plan survives contact with the community is what I like to say, working in DAOs. So I think there's a degree of flexibility in there, but yeah, it's really whatever fits the purpose. It doesn't have to be a certain way for the sake of itself.
That said, are there best practices that you have seen for governance now being kind of at the, one of these, the largest community governed protocol? Are there some best practices that we're seeing come out of the DAO space for governance and decision making is really what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of those are still forming. I would say that culture of community is vital. Community and its ability to maintain its focus on its core mission, and to be a healthy place to work, like a vibrant place for people to contribute value, is so important. So I think there is, in the early stages of the life cycle of a DAO, decentralizing for the sake of itself too quickly is sometimes a recipe for chaos. And not like in a good way. It's not to say that it can't work. I think that it's something you work toward. Decentralization and that the autonomy in the word DAO is a goal, but it doesn't have to be there off the bat. So I would say focus on generating that culture, getting the right people in the room, the people who are builders, to be a part of that genesis class of the life cycle of a DAO, and worry less about how it's a perfect decentralized democracy off the start, or whatever you want to label it. I would say that's the first and foremost thing to keep in your mind.
You said a really interesting phrase is you want it to be a healthy place to contribute value. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like the tone of conversation? Do you mean it returns some sort of value back to the contributor, or it's a place where people are supported generally emotionally? Like, do you have a perspective on that? I think that's just a really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. I think people seek out community. I seek out community. I bet you do. I think Chainlink has a fantastic community. I think BitDAO is a fantastic community. People seek belonging, and so finding a place. And anybody who's here right now, if you're watching this right now, you're on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
You're looking at things and learning about things that the majority of the world isn't even thinking about yet. And the kind there's already a basis for the right people to be there. Like everybody's here for the right reasons, right? Like if you're in a DAO Discord and you're like, what can I do? There's that energy needs to be protected, I think. And that doesn't mean it should favor like exclusion. It just means those should be trumpeted. It should be championed. Because those people are going to build the DAO out. So I think its culture is huge. I mean, if you look at the cultures of other large-scale DAOs, without naming any, I mean, those cultures really are what set up the scope of what the DAO is able to do or accomplish. The culture of BitDAO is to have this broad open mandate, to be chain and project agnostic, to go where the builders are. And so what it does, what it ends up accomplishing will reflect that. If you have a culture that's dedicated to a single protocol, you will have a hard time convincing that DAO to allocate to gaming if it's focused on a single DeFi protocol. So, I mean, it's all culture. It's culture. I think it's so important.
Another cool thing you said is use culture to maintain a long-term, I don't know if you said long-term, but it was implied, focus on really clear goals. And with BitDAO, it sounds like you've got a broad mandate, and so there's some goals, but you have these guiding principles of like, well, it's not necessarily on one chain, it's multi-chain. It's not necessarily in one region, it's multi. But there's just a lot of really interesting stuff there that I'm jotting down, taking notes for myself. I appreciate. Before we kind of wrap here, Ernest has been dropping some comments in the YouTube, so I'm just going to read this. There's 3 in a row here. So much of learning in self-governance is happening. Even failed governance has its value in lessons learned. Yes, scary, but failure is part of models, especially when it comes to decision-making in democracies. Like, these are sloppier than mathematical consensus, right? It's a very different thing, even though we're kind of neighbors in this industry. It's more of a direction and a pathway than a starting point or end point. This goes to your comment, Kevin, about, do you start with a full democracy immediately, or is it a progressive thing? And sometimes it might need to be progressive to maintain those values. And open, honest, inclusive discussions allow for meaningful creative work. I think you were talking about, is it a healthy place to contribute value? So I appreciate that, Ernest. Really thoughtful contributions that add some layers of meaning to what we were talking about there. Kevin, as we wrap here, kind of give us a snapshot of the next 3-6 months, maybe a year. What's coming up for BitDAO? What do we have to look forward to? And then all the joining information, telegrams and website and all that for BitDAO is in the description already. So that is set. People can go there, should already be going there, checking it out. Don't leave this, but open a new tab. Come on. But give us a snapshot. What's coming up in the next 3-6 months?
I think in the immediate near term, BitDAO, it is a billion-dollar organization, and so it deserves somewhat of a facelift. So I think that there are members of the community that are rallying around redesigning some of the core web properties, the brand, to make it just a more aesthetically inviting place when new people join. And over the past 6 months, I think that there's been a ton of discussion in the community about refining what it is exactly that BitDAO is trying to achieve, and how it's going to achieve it. And so placing that refined that refined story on that same, you know, facelifted website, things like that. So kind of rebrand, I think, is in the works to bring the community in on. I think also it is just continuing to position BitDAO as the place to go if you want to build. Is that me or is that you?
You sound great to me.
Oh, okay.
Still good.
Okay. I had something ringing in my ear. There's more autonomous entity. That's what we call like these new entities, like Game 7, EduDAO, or ZK DAO. I didn't even get to talk about ZK DAO, layer 2 scaling ecosystem accelerator for zero knowledge proofs for ZK Sync. $200 million. I think it's huge, like for DAOs in general, and just ETH and a ton of stuff there. But it's seeing more and more of these autonomous entities come online, and then seeing them work together. This idea of DAO to DAO infrastructure, like you hear B2C and B2B, it's D to D, it's DAO to DAO. How are they aligned? How are they working together? There's a really awesome article that I can share as well that talks about, you know, how DAOs graft. Like there's no acquisitions really anymore. It's like budding and grafting. It's very organic, the lexicon used to describe how they move together. So I think it is a rebrand of BitDAO just to refine the message and put on a good face when new people are joining the ecosystem, and then continuing the development of that autonomous entity engine, and then starting to watch the ways that they work together. You know, ZK DAO as a layer 2 ecosystem accelerator, working with, you know, Game 7, which is building games that use blockchain, and, you know, obviously, like, it just match made in heaven there. So things like that, I think we're going to see in the next 6 months to a year. And so a year from now, if there are, you know, a dozen autonomous entities, then the BitDAO organization ecosystem is massive, and also probably the top of the funnel for if you want to get into Web3 in your career, is, you know, coming to the BitDAO website and seeing all of the places, these autonomous entities where there are opportunities in the DAO structure, in labs, you know, you name it. So I think it's going to be a really interesting space to watch explode in this kind of fractal flywheel of growth as more DAOs and DAO entities come online through proposals to the Treasury.
Awesome getting to know you, Kevin, and getting to know BitDAO. Very much appreciate your time. All the information and joining links for BitDAO, I said, are down below, so please join those if you have not already. Kevin, let's catch up again in the future. We'll kind of see where maybe, you know, Game 7 eventually, and, you know, ZK DAO, get some Chainlink integrations. We can bring you and them on, and we'll keep talking. Does that sound good, man?
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me on, Andy.
Absolutely. You hang out, just chill for a second. I'm going to go solo and tell these fine folks where to follow and what to do, and do all my YouTube goodness. Hey, everybody. That was a fun chat. Learned a lot about BitDAO, and Joshua Seymour, thank you very much. Awesome conversation and wisdom share. You're very, very welcome. I appreciated that one as well. Hey, like and subscribe. We do these AMAs. We do about 2 a week, Q&As. We've got one coming up on Thursday with Mobi. They're a mobile payments provider. Really interesting fintech look, and how they're integrating crypto and using crypto, and really blending those two worlds. So please check that out on Thursday. If you're at ETH Denver, there's a ton of Chainlink events and stuff going on. There's a DevRel boot camp later this week. There's a happy hour, community happy hour, I think tomorrow evening. So please Google around, look those. That'll be on the Chainlink Twitter feeds. Hey, follow Chainlink Twitter, at Chainlink on Twitter for big protocol and technology announcements, and at smart_contract for announcements about events like these, where we do these Q&As with cool people and cool projects, as well as other ecosystem announcements and events. You can also follow at Chainlink Labs if you want to find out about hiring and Chainlink Labs related information that's not directly related to the protocol necessarily. Again, I'm Andy Boyan. Thank you so much to Kevin coming on from Windranger Labs to talk about BitDAO. And thank you to all of you for hanging out. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.